Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to speak in this wonderful conference on equality and diversity in geosciences. I'm delighted to be here. I feel a bit of an outsider as I'm not a geoscientist or nor do I work on geoscience in reality, but I'm a historian of geoscience. I work on the history of geology. And I will be speaking from that perspective about the problems of equality in geoscience historically. Um, Before I actually make the presentation, the point that I would be trying to make from a historical perspective is that the problem of equality or inclusivity in geoscience is not a peculiar problem of geoscience, but the issue is that it becomes quite an important problem for geoscience. And I also feel, more importantly, that geoscience has particularly to gain from this conversation about equality and diversity in geosciences, because ultimately geoscience is linked to questions of human habitat and also human resources. So just allow me to share my presentation as I start my brief talk. Hopefully you can see the. So as I said, I will be speaking about the problem of inclusivity and diversity in geoscience from a historical perspective. And I will talk about some of the historical roots of why there has been this issue of equality and inclusivity in geosciences. And I will be speaking from three different perspectives. First, I will be speaking about the history of geoscience and the problem of whiteness that remains as a problem in geoscience. Second, I will be talking about the history of geoscience and colonialism. And third, I will be talking about some of the alternative geo perspectives that are possible. So if we are talking about inclusivity in geoscience, it is, I think, important to talk about including other alternative geoscientific or geo perspectives within geoscience. It will, I believe, only enrich geoscience if we are inclusive of not only the personalities or the individuals performing this geoscience, but also the perspectives, the cultural, social perspectives in and around geoscience that can actually enrich the subject and the discipline epistemologically. So, what is this problem of whiteness that I am talking about in the history of geosciences? This is just an exhibition that was a fantastic exhibition organized in Paris at the Pompidou Center on prehistory and the modern enigma. And what you see is the history of geoscience, which is essentially a history of the earth that was undiscovered in Europe from the 17th century, a deep history of the earth, of the strata, of the fossils that was explored, was essentially a very European search about the history of the earth, about the secular history of nature, and that unfolded in that very European perspective about the search for a deep history of the nature. So what happens is that entire history is very white. And if you see in the present contemporary representations of this in this kind of exhibitions, is that these are all white men. So the history of that whiteness, it's not just the whiteness of the wall, it's the whiteness of what is written on that wall that is striking. And that is quite normalized. We don't even wonder. So the history of geoscience is undeniably a white history. That the way it was discovered, the way it's a global history. It's discovered across the world, but it is white male, and that is an inescapable reality. And it is important to face that whiteness, that why that search for geological strata, fossils, human origins has remained a very European discipline from the 18th century. And I just wanted to show you this famous image, which you might have seen, which is a 1961 image of the National Geographic, which shows Louis Leakey, who is the famous paleoanthropologist who searched and found for early human settlements in the Olduvai Valley in Tanzania. And what you see here is Louis Leakey and his family at work in Olduvai Valley, where he found human remains, which are proven to be the earliest human remains in Tanzania, and the earliest human remains of the world. And what you see is him working with his family, and the very whiteness, it's in Tanzania, and the very whiteness of the pursuit. And I think those of you who have participated in geoscience, who perform geoscience in various parts of the world, would be familiar with this kind of an image, this very whiteness of the image. And you see, it's the black and white contrasts are quite interesting for me. This image is quite a fascinating image for me. Is not only the white, black and white contrast is in the Dalmatians who are stretching in the beautiful summer sun in Tanzania, which I miss now as I'm standing in the cold Manchester. But also the black and white contrasts of Louis Leakey and his black assistant, who is almost a shadowy figure just behind him, almost an insignificant reminder that this is not Europe. And it's a significant reminder, but he is very insignificant in the photo. But this is the image that is from the 18th century to the 20th century. This is the image of geoscience, that it's a white discipline pursued by white people in across the world, and the findings are almost a white heritage and European heritage. The search for, although Africa becomes the search, the home of humans, that search or the pursuit was explored within this very European pursuit about the search for human antiquity. So this image in the 1961, the most important image in the history of geological search for human antiquity, is a reminder that it remained a very wide discipline till the middle of the 20th century. And that problem has been highlighted in several literature that is coming up in recent years, that about the problem of whiteness in archaeology, the problem of whiteness in the search for of deep human past. And it's a very powerful communication that is taking place about decolonizing deep historical projects, the search for geosciences. And it's an important conversation to be had about how to confront this whiteness and what is the problem of this whiteness about geosciences, and how these can be decolonized. And we can have conversations about what is decolonization, which I don't have the time to go through here, but what is meant by decolonization. And I think that is an important part of the conference, of this conference as well. So I'm just making you aware of this wide literature that is emerging, which is highlighting the problem that I cited before. And that's an important part of the conversation that we need to be had. So the second part of that problem that I wanted to highlight is why that history of geoscience has remained this kind of very wide discipline. One of the main reasons is that geoscience, or geology, as we refer to it in the 18th and 19th century, that is the search for the history of the earth, and also the search for minerals in the earth or mining in the earth, emerged as a discipline at the time when Europeans were developing empire. I'm not going into the great history of imperialism here, which is quite irrelevant. But the point to remember is from the late 18th century and the 19th century, as geology developed as a scientific discipline, was exactly the same period when European imperialism developed in across Asia, Australia, Africa, and South America, and other parts. So what happened was the two developments, geology and colonialism, developed simultaneously. And the British Geological Survey, which was established at the height of the British Empire in 1835, established several other similar surveys across the world to look for minerals. And colonial mineral resources were vital to imperialism. Coal, diamond, most of the output of diamond came from the colonies. And this is the reminder of this is the big hole of Kimberley, which you might be familiar with, which is almost a living example of the deep mark that colonial geoscience had established on the landscapes of the earth. It's a human-made hole. And this reminds as a gaunt reminder of the link between geoscience and colonialisms, and how geoscience and geology was vital to colonialism. It provided the most important minerals to the empire, and it remained as an important and or a vital pursuit of European colonialism. So it's important to see the whiteness that I referred to earlier in the wall in the Paris exhibition, or the whiteness in Louis Leakey's pursuit, as a product of this history of the link between geology and colonialism that developed at the same period. And on that, these fires of geoscience, or this colonial geoscience, like the deep hole in Kimberley, are contemporary issues. They have not disappeared. They remain together. And one of the classic examples of this is one of the biggest coal mines in India, which was discovered by the British in the 19th century, which is in Jharia, in eastern India. And it's a massive hole. And there was an incident in 1930 where the pillars of the mines collapsed, which led to an underground fire, which keeps burning till today. And residents who live and work around those mines live within those colonial histories of geosciences. So the point I'm trying to make is what we know as colonial geoscience or colonialism and geology is not dead. It is a living and literally like the fires of the coal mines of Jharia, they are living in our contemporary lives. And it's important to be aware of those colonial legacies of geoscience as we have these conversations today about the questions of diversity and inclusivity in geoscience. So on that perspective, I will also talk about a certain epistemology or a disciplinary problem that remains within geoscience as a result of this very whiteness of geoscience, as an epistemological search for the history of the earth, but also the blackness of geoscience as it is practiced in the coal mines of Jharia or the mines of Kimberley. So that there's a black history of geoscience and a white history of geoscience that I wanted to highlight. And so the white history of geoscience, which is in the global north, that is practiced, is very theoretical about the deep history, the continental drift theory, as it was pursued in Europe and other nations. But that entire idea of geoscience as an epistemology, as a search for the history of the earth, developed in the global south, and where it was about coal, mines, a black, dark history. So there is this duality that remained in the 19th century. I do not know that if that duality remains today, but it's an important duality that remained in the colonial period and the history of geoscience. That is the white history of geoscience and the black history of mines and minerals. Almost the two do not have a conversation, except in the history of what I would talk about a little bit about the Glossopteris fossil, which was found in the various coal mines in the 19th century in South Africa, Australia, and India. The same, and it is this Glossopteris, you will be familiar with this, but it's the same Glossopteris fossil that was found and which actually led to the idea that these various regions, such as South Africa, India, and Australia, were all connected, which led to the idea of the Gondwana land as a prehistoric landmass which existed and which actually was fundamental in the shaping the theories of continental drift theory, that continents had actually moved. That's why the Gondwana land has moved, has broken off. The point I'm trying to make here is that the coal mines of South Africa, India, and Australia, which is a dark history of geoscience, actually defined the white history of geoscience of continental drift theory, which is an epistemological theoretical geoscience. And the link is the Glossopteris indica fossil, which is actually found or was found in the coal mines of these colonial areas of the South. On that note, I wanted to end with of how to merge this, what I am calling here for the sake of convenience, the black and the white history of the earth. And it is important as we live in this era of climate change, of global warming, of the Jharia coal mines which are still burning, probably to search for alternative and other perspectives of the earth. And what I have presented here in front of you are just a few samples of what the earth or perspectives of the earth exist. The important point to remember is there are vital, complex perspectives of the earth that exist. And what I have shown here is Aboriginal Australian Aboriginal art around water reserves and water management, and which might prove vital. I do not know if these are already being included within modern geoscience, but these insights about Aboriginal art, about Aboriginal practices, about water management, fire management, and as you know, earlier this year, major parts of Australia was ravaged by bushfires, and so these experiences are asking us to look at alternative geo practices or geological practices or practices about the earth practiced by by Aboriginal and other communities. So if we are having a conversation about the problem of equality and diversity within geoscience, can we have a conversation about how whiteness, the epistemology of geoscience, remains, and how we can incorporate and include other perspectives about the earth, which is a common inheritance, and about the resources of the earth and the use of the resources of the earth within that geoscience as a discipline. And I think it is important to have these conversations to understand that various perspectives of nature exist, various perspectives of the deep history of the earth exists, and it is only important and vital to incorporate that. I'll give you an example of why I'm making that case, and probably going over the time in doing so. Please forgive me if I am. Is that in the 19th century, when Europeans were searching for various mineral resources and histories of the earth in the various colonies in India, Australia, and South Africa, they often depended on Aboriginal as informants, on Aboriginal geomyths or the mythologies or their ideas about the earth, the deep history of the earth, to interpret the fossils and the layers that they found. So, what I'm proposing here is not a new phenomena of incorporating alternative geoperspectives. From the 19th century, geologists have incorporated Aboriginal insights about the earth, tribal insights about the earth in the modern geological uh, theories. And I've talked about it, about how continental drift theory, about Glossopteris fossils had alternative indigenous perspectives which were incorporated within geosciences. The only problem is they were never recognized. But what I'm suggesting now, it is a more open discussion about all, including those geo perspectives as an important way of making our discipline or your discipline in a way more inclusive in practice and in its survival in the contemporary world. Thank you very much.